They thought she was just another broken widow, quiet, grieving, harmless, but they didn't know the hands that once held sorrow had also held death. They followed her, mocked her, cornered her like prey. What they didn't know was that this woman didn't run from danger. She used to ride with it. She wasn't just mourning a man. She was the most feared sharpshooter the West had ever known, and the moment they crossed that line, she didn't raise her voice. She raised her rifle. This isn't just a story about revenge. This is the return of a legend, and the shot that echoed louder than any scream. They thought she was just a widow, quiet, fragile, broken by grief. But that's the problem with assumptions in the Wild West. They're often dead wrong. Dust blew across the old town of Red Hollow, a place where silence was louder than gunfire, a place where folks didn't ask questions, and if they did, they never asked them twice. That's where she showed up, dressed in black, eyes like a storm, and a name no one remembered or dared to ask. They saw a woman who kept to herself, living in a shack near the edge of town, hanging clothes on a line, feeding stray dogs, eyes always lowered, voice barely above a whisper. She was the kind of woman people pitied or ignored, but not the kind of woman anyone feared, not yet. But every night, behind closed curtains, with oil lamps burning low, she would open a wooden box wrapped in worn leather. Inside lay a rifle, not just any rifle, the kind passed down in bloodlines, the kind that's baptized in smoke, thunder, and revenge, the kind that spoke without mercy. She'd clean it slow. Every motion was muscle memory, steady hands, sharp eyes, a calm that comes from having seen too much. And survived all of it. The townsfolk had their whispers. Her husband died in a shootout. Her son was taken by outlaws. She's running from something. But no one really knew, because she never told. Because she didn't need to. Then came the Cowboys. They weren't just any drifters. They were the kind who left a trail of broken doors, bruised egos, and bodies that no sheriff ever bothered to count. 6 of them, rough voices, bigger mouths, trigger fingers that twitched for sport. They thought they owned the road they rode in on, and when they spotted her outside the trading post, carrying a bag of flour and a tin of beans, they smirked like they smelled weakness. They circled her like vultures. "Need help with that, darlin'?" She didn't answer, just kept walking. Another leaned in. "You too proud, or just too pretty to talk?" Still nothing, just eyes that didn't flinch. That's what unnerved them, not fear, not sass, just silence, like she was looking through them, like they weren't worth remembering. They didn't like that, so they followed her, not because they were brave, but because they were bored. And sometimes bored men become dangerous. She reached the edge of town, nearly home, when they blocked her path. One dismounted, spat on the ground, and grabbed her basket. "You gonna act all high and mighty?" he snarled. "In our town." But this wasn't their town. They just didn't know it yet. She stared at the man, slow, steady, then looked down at the rifle he carried. Cheap metal, loose grip, amateur hands. She said only one thing: "You picked the wrong ghost." They laughed. All of them, like she was telling a joke. But in less than a heartbeat, she reached beneath her cloak and drew out a revolver so fast, the air cracked before the sound did. She didn't shoot. She didn't have to. The gun was pointed straight at his heart, unshaking, unblinking. For the first time, their laughter died, and just like that, their illusion of power shattered. That was when old Hank, the bartender, stepped out from behind his door. He'd seen the whole thing. He didn't say a word, just looked at the cowboy, then looked at her, and gave a slow nod. That's when it clicked. She wasn't just some grieving widow. She wasn't some sad memory in black. She was Cassidy Cross, the legend, the sniper who'd once taken down 3 bounty hunters in a single breath, the sharpshooter who rode with the rebellion in Copper Creek, the widow of Jack Cross, the gunslinger every outlaw feared. But Cassidy, she was the better shot, always had been. She just never needed to prove it. Until now. The man dropped the basket, took a shaky step back, but he was too late. She didn't fire. Instead, she lowered her gun and whispered, "Next time, don't corner what you don't understand." They didn't just back off. They scattered. Later that night, The Cowboys packed up and left Red Hollow for good. No one stopped them. No one asked where they were going, but everyone knew why. Because legends don't need to shout. They speak once, and the world listens. That night, kids whispered her name like bedtime stories. Old men remembered tales they thought were myths. And the town of Red Hollow, for the first time in years, felt safe again. Not because of law, not because of fear, but because one woman reminded everyone, even silence carries a trigger. By dawn, the town was already whispering. Cassidy Cross hadn't fired a single bullet, yet she'd silenced 6 outlaws and changed the heartbeat of Red Hollow. But what they saw that day was only the tip of the storm, because behind her calm eyes lived 100 stories no one dared to ask about. Stories soaked in gunpowder, heartbreak, and the kind of scars no doctor could see. Cassidy didn't sleep that night. She sat on her porch, rifle on her lap, watching the wind push across the land like an old friend returning. But her eyes weren't on the horizon. They were lost somewhere deeper, in memory. Because when the past knocks, it doesn't knock gently. Years ago, before the black dresses and silence, Cassidy rode under a name that echoed across the West. Cassidy dead, Cross, the only woman who could shoot a coin from a galloping horse's mouth. And do it in the dark, but she didn't ride for fame. She rode for one reason. Jack, her husband, her fire, her only peace in a world that never stayed still. Together, they weren't just lovers, they were legends. A pair of outlaws turned protectors, defending the innocent in towns too forgotten for law to reach. They took down rustlers, bounty hunters, raiders, anyone who preyed on the weak. But legends don't get happy endings. One cold winter, word came of a gang moving through the Snake Ridge Pass. Raiders, armed to the teeth, a bounty on their heads taller than a church bell. Jack, always eager, saddled up before Cassidy could stop him. "I'll be back by supper," he said with that crooked grin. "Save me a piece of that pie." She never made that pie because he never came back. All she got was his hat and a bullet that hadn't been fired. One clean round, still warm, still waiting, Cassidy searched for weeks. Trails ran cold, clues vanished. Some say Jack was ambushed. Others whispered betrayal, but Cassidy stopped listening. She didn't want justice. She wanted the truth and a clean shot when she found it. So she vanished. She burned her name, buried her gear, disappeared into the ashes of a world she once ruled. For years, she was a ghost, a widow in black, haunting the edges of forgotten maps. But legends don't stay buried, and when those cowboys tried to corner her, something inside her clicked. Not anger, not revenge, just clarity. The world didn't need her silence anymore. It needed her aim. 2 weeks later, a letter came, no name, just ink smudged by wind and dirt. It read, "You don't know me, but I rode with the ones who took Jack. I left before the bullets flew, but I know where he's buried. I owe you that much." There was a map. A crude sketch, a mark near Black Coyote Canyon. Cassidy didn't hesitate. She packed only what she needed, one saddle, one knife, and her rifle, the one Jack gave her the day they said "I do." She rode alone. The trail was cruel. Winds tore through the ridges like screams. Wolves watched from distance. The silence here didn't feel like peace. It felt like the world holding its breath, and then she saw it. An unmarked grave, a lone tree above it. No cross, no name, just a familiar hat half buried in dust. Cassidy dismounted, dropped to her knees, and for the first time in years, she cried, not loudly, not broken, just a tear, for every memory that would never happen, a child they never had, a song they never finished, a ride they never took. She placed the bullet beside the grave, the one that had waited all these years. "You can rest now," she whispered, "but I'm not done." She turned, walked back toward the canyon trail, and heard a voice behind her. "You're earlier than I expected." Cassidy froze. A man stepped out from behind the rock wall. Mid-50s, scarred face, rifle in one hand, regret in his eyes. "I wrote the letter," he said, I owed Jack, but I owe you more. Cassidy said nothing, just looked at him like she could see straight through to every lie he ever told. He took off his hat. I wasn't part of the ambush, he continued, but I didn't stop it. I let it happen. I let him die because I was scared, because I thought they'd kill me too. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. Then why tell me now? She asked. He sighed. Because there's one left, the one who gave the order. He's still alive, rich, untouchable, built a town with blood money and called it justice. Cassidy stepped forward. Where? The man handed her a silver coin. Show this in Dustrock. They'll take you to him. 3 days later, Cassidy arrived at Dustrock. It looked clean on the surface, like most rotted things do, but the air was wrong. Too quiet, too watched. She walked into the saloon like she belonged there. No one stopped her. She flipped the coin on the counter. The bartender swallowed hard, gestured to the back room. Inside sat a man. Gray beard, fancy vest, surrounded by guards, but none of them mattered. Cassidy walked in like death wearing boots. The man smiled. Well, I'll be Cassidy Cross. I thought you were dead. She didn't smile back. I'm not the one who should be. His voice was calm, oily. I did what I had to. Jack got in the way. The world ain't fair, sweetheart. Cassidy raised her rifle. I didn't come for fair. The guards reached. Too slow. 3 shots. 3 bodies. She didn't even blink. Now it was just him. He reached under the table click. Cassidy fired first. 1 shot. Right through the heart, and just like that, the last page of her past burned to ash. She walked out of Dustrock as it fell silent. No cheers, no witnesses, just wind and the sound of boots walking away. Back in Red Hollow, they say she returned just once, hung up her rifle, planted a single flower by her door, and never spoke of the past again, because when you've faced the devil and pulled the trigger first, you don't need to tell your story. The world already knows. She wasn't just a widow. She was a storm dressed in silence. They cornered her, thinking she was broken, but she reminded the world, legends don't fade, they reload and they return, exactly when they're needed.